Before Parvati existed, before the sacred love everyone knows, there was a story that few remember, but that changed the destiny of the universe. A story hidden between symbols, myths, and pains that even the divine had to experience. Because behind the image of the great Shiva, the impenetrable, the absolute ascetic, the Lord of pure consciousness, there was a moment when even he was broken by something as human as eternal, the love. And before Shiva became the master of overcoming, the destroyer of illusions, and the being who dances the creation and dissolution of the cosmos, he knew the first love that awakened him, and the first love that destroyed him. Her name was Sati, and Sati was not just a goddess. She represented the primordial impulse, the call of the heart, the spark that makes consciousness move after eras of silence. But her love faced the greatest enemy of the human soul, the ego, personified in the figure of her own father, Dakshia. An ego so great that it refused to see the sacred before it and pushed Sati to the most radical decision a being can make. But to understand the greatness of this love, to comprehend why the loss of Sati shook even the highest of gods, we need to go back even further in time.
Before time had a name, before the worlds breathed, there existed only a state of being so vast and so silent that no human word could describe it. This state was Shiva, not as the meditative blue figure we know today, but as pure consciousness, still, infinite, without desire, without form, in need of nothing. Shiva was the point where all answers exist, and at the same time where no question ever arises. He was the full void, the nothing that contains everything. And it was in this absolute silence that something extraordinary happened. Because even in divine stillness, there is a secret rhythm, a delicate pulse that the entire universe follows, even though silent. And it was from this subtle vibration, as light as a thought that has yet to form, that a movement arose. Not a physical movement, but an inner movement. An imperceptible call coming from a place that even Shiva could not name. It was the primordial feminine awakening. Not as form, not as body, but as energy. The energy that makes life want to express itself. The force that invites consciousness to move, as if saying, awaken, experience, allow yourself to feel. In symbolic tradition, this energy goes by many names: Shakti, Devi, Dawn, Maya, the Divine Mother. But before being Parvati, before even being Sati, she was just a divine impulse, a subtle desire for manifestation. When the call of the primordial feminine echoed through the cosmic silence, creation began to move as one who awakens from a deep dream. And in that movement, Sati found her path back into the world. Sati emerged as the daughter of Dakshia, the king of forms, of order, of structure. A man of power, yet limited by his own mind, unable to comprehend the mystery that exists beyond what the eyes can see. But Sati was different from the very first moment. She carried within her the spark of Shakti, the vital energy that sets the cosmos in motion. She grew up fascinated by Shiva.
Sati devoted hours to meditation, seeking the presence of Shiva. One day, as she knelt with her hands joined in prayer, the air around her seemed to change. A gentle breeze tousled her hair, carrying the scent of the sacred mountains. She had always imagined this moment, what it would be like to stand before him. Then, from the silence of the forest, he appeared. Shiva. He stepped forward, his presence immense, like a force of nature itself. He stood there, towering, with eyes that seemed to see into her soul. Sati blinked, stunned by the sight of him. Her god right before her, with his flowing hair, ash-covered skin, and eyes as deep as the cosmos. Her heart skipped a beat, and at the same time her thoughts scattered. Shiva watched her with a gaze that seemed to pierce through time. His eyes were intense, fixed on her, as if she were the only thing that mattered in that moment. She couldn't speak, her breath caught in her throat. After what felt like an eternity, Shiva finally spoke, his voice deep and resonant like thunder. "I shall grant you one request." Before she could respond, something unexpected happened. Kama, the god of love, shot his arrow from behind Shiva. The small, sharp tip struck Shiva's heart. In the blink of an eye, the stillness around them shattered. Shiva, the great ascetic who had never known desire, felt a wave of emotion unlike anything he had ever experienced. He looked at Sati, and suddenly the world seemed to tilt. A burning, insatiable passion swept over him completely. Sati stood frozen, equally surprised by the sudden heat in the air and the color rising in her cheeks. Shiva stepped closer, his eyes now filled with something far beyond the tranquility he had always known. The moment had shifted. He was no longer the unchanging god of meditation. He was a man touched by love, by desire. Then he spoke, "Marry me." Sati stood still, unable to move. He repeated, "Marry me." And again, "Marry me." Finally, Sati spoke, startled, "You must speak to my father." Something inside her awakened. She had always felt drawn to him, but now the pull was stronger, more urgent. She realized with sudden clarity that this was not merely a meeting of hearts, but something deeper. It was destiny revealing itself before her eyes. Shiva smiled, a smile of someone who already knew the path was set. He accepted the challenge of speaking with Sati's father, knowing that their love was stronger than any obstacle. And so, after overcoming her father's resistance, they were married, and together they lived happily for many years in the peaks of the Himalayas, where peace and love reigned above the sacred mountains.
While Sati and Shiva met in the purity of the mountains, in Daksha's palace, something entirely different was unfolding. Daksha, the great king, the master of ceremonies, the guardian of order and rules, carried within himself a shadow he did not recognize: pride. Daksha believed he understood the divine. He thought he knew which gods deserved respect, who was worthy of worship, who fit into the order he had built. And that is where the conflict is born, because the truly sacred never fits into human structures. The sacred always overflows. Shiva, with his ashes, his disheveled hair, his life spent in cemeteries and forests, seemed, in Daksha's eyes, an insult to the very idea of divinity. The love between Sati and Shiva blossomed like a beam of light amid the vastness of the mountains. But Daksha's heart hardened more and more with each passing day. And when the ego is wounded, it acts. And that is exactly what Dakshia did. Determined to reassert his authority and show his power to the world, Dakshia organized the great yagna, a grand fire ritual meant for kings, sages, and demigods. All beings of importance were invited. All except two, Sati and Shiva. The omission was not a mistake. It was a calculated insult. Dakshia did not only want to punish Shiva, he wanted to humiliate him. He wanted to show the world that the ascetic of the cremation grounds, the Lord of Spirits, was not worthy of standing on the same ground as the respectable gods. It was a display of power, an attempt to destroy what he could not understand. When Sati learned about the yagna, not through an invitation but through its absence, something broke inside her. It was not only her father's scorn, it was the denial of her love, the refusal of her choice, the attempt to erase everything she had become since she met Shiva. Sati felt a deep pain, but she also felt fire. The same fire that had led her to Shiva now burned inside her like an uncontrollable flame. Sati approached Shiva, her heart torn between love and indignation. How can I stay here while my family celebrates a ritual that denies my existence and spreads poison against the one I love? And Shiva, with his absolute serenity, simply replied, "Do not go." Shiva cared nothing for the insult or the ritual, but he cared for Sati. Yet Sati could not remain still. She knew she needed to take a stand. It was a matter of identity and truth. As the flames of the yagna rose in Daksha's palace, Sati made her decision. She looked at Shiva with an emotion that held love, pain, courage, and inevitability. And Shiva, with his vision beyond time, perceived that something irreversible was about to happen. Destiny had been set in motion. The invitation never came, but Sati would attend the ritual all the same. The entrance that silenced the ritual. When she stepped into the great hall of the yagna, a profound silence fell over everyone. The kings halted, the priests froze, even the sacrificial fire seemed to lose its strength for an instant. No one expected her to come, and deep down, no one had the courage to look directly at her. Sati was not merely Daksha's daughter, she was Shakti incarnate, the energy that sustains the cosmos, the force that governs life, death, and rebirth. But there, before them all, she was treated as if she were nothing. Dakshia did not rise, he did not smile, he did not show even the faintest trace of shame. With the sharpest tone he could muster, he greeted her with calculated coldness. "Why have you come if you were not invited?" The phrase, short and venomous, pierced Sati's heart like an arrow. It was more than an insult. It was a denial. It was the ego's final attempt to destroy the sacred. Sati rose in the midst of the ritual. Her eyes shone with a power no mortal could withstand. She did not speak as a daughter, not as a wife. She spoke as Shakti, the primordial energy, the cosmic force, life itself incarnate. Her voice echoed like thunder. "My body was born of you, Dakshia, but my soul belongs to the infinite, and the infinite is Shiva." Silence fell over the hall. Sati continued, "Today, in this assembly, I declare I cannot remain in a place where my beloved is insulted. I cannot bear a body given by one who despises the sacred." And then came the sentence that marked the point of no return. "I renounce the body you gave me." With those words, she symbolically severed the bond with her father, with her birth, with everything Dakshia represented. The inner fire becomes real fire. Sati sat before the flame of the yagna. She closed her eyes and allowed the primordial energy to awaken fully within her. The flame did not burn her.
She became the flame. Her spirit shattered the bonds of flesh, and Shakti's energy returned to the cosmos in a burst of light no one would ever forget. The yagna, instead of a ritual of honor, became the stage of the greatest sacrilege ever committed by a being. Dakshia had insulted the divine, and now the divine had answered.
After Sati's death, silence fell across the cosmos. It was a silence so heavy that it seemed to foreshadow something even more devastating. Shiva remained motionless, consumed by grief, unreachable by any form of comfort. His pain was not human, it was deep and cosmic. Shiva, the god of dissolution, who had always mastered his own power, for the first time could not maintain control. The tears that fell from his eyes touched the ground and turned into fire. The sky darkened, the air around him became a storm, and from Shiva's grief, a terrible and relentless form was born, Virabhadra. He was not an ordinary warrior, nor a god. He was the embodiment of divine fury, the unstoppable force that rises when the sacred is violated. Virabhadra appeared like a black lightning strike, with eyes burning like dying worlds, and a body made of fire and darkness. He bowed before Shiva, who still knelt in anguish, and said, "Lord, give me your command." But Shiva did not need to speak. His silence was enough. The mission was clear: to correct Daksha's injustice. At the site of the yajna, Dakshia continued his ceremony as if nothing had happened. He carried on celebrating, ignoring Sati's death and believing the cosmos would still bow to him. The beings present were not there out of respect, but out of fear of Daksha's ritualistic power. But then the ground began to tremble. A wild, unstoppable force approached. The sacrificial flames began to waver. The chants ceased, and a deadly silence filled the air. Virabhadra entered. The deities stepped back. Even the gods themselves felt fear. Virabhadra raised his sword, which shone like 100 bolts of lightning. With a thunderous roar, he declared, "This ritual is stained with ego. Whoever wounds the sacred must face destruction." The battle was devastating. Virabhadra did not fight merely to win, he fought to purify. He tore apart the arrogance Dakshia had spread throughout the world. The king tried to flee, tried to argue, tried to hide behind his authority, but none of it mattered. There is no authority before cosmic justice. Virabhadra reached him, and in a single strike severed his head from his body. The ceremony ended. Daksha's pride ended. His illusion of power came to an end. When everything was over, Virabhadra stood again before Shiva. His sword still glowed and he still emanated a tempestuous energy. But when he looked at Shiva's face, Virabhadra understood that there was no victory in what had happened. There was only grief. The entire universe felt that grief. Destruction had taken place, but the process of healing had only just begun.
The universe had witnessed the disappearance of Sati, but the energy she embodied, the primordial feminine force, the impulse that calls the divine into motion, could not simply cease to exist. In the silence that followed the tragedy, a profound truth began to reveal itself. No flame born from love ever returns to nothing. While Shiva's grief echoed through the realms, something subtle was happening behind the curtains of existence. The cosmic currents, sensitive to the rupture between the unmoving masculine and the sacrificed feminine, began to turn once more. Creation itself seemed to understand something that Shiva, in his sorrow, could not yet perceive. Love, when true, does not accept an ending. It transforms. And thus the promise emerged. Not declared, not announced, not written by any god, but etched into the very invisible laws of the cosmos. Sati would return, not as repetition, but as evolution.